Welcome back to Scott's Music Cave, and in today's video I have an update on Mr. Richard Albrecht's tenor saxophone, which I made a video about in the last video. I will put that at the end of the video. And I finished the overhaul. It's been a few weeks since I've made that video, maybe longer, and I've been busy and I made time to get this one done. It turned out amazing. It cleaned up really nicely. It's a beautiful horn and it plays as good as it looks. And it's a 1963 Mark VI. In this video I'm going to talk about the saxophone and what all I did to it. And actually at the end of the video I'm going to demonstrate it because this horn sounds fantastic. So, it was dirty. I had to take it apart. It was probably never been taken apart. The pads on it were definitely original, at least most of them were original. Had all original resonators for sure. And I think there was a couple pads changed out, and they probably put the resonator back in because even though they're plastic, the backs of them have a screw, so you could reuse the resonators if you wanted to. This particular horn I put solid brass resonators in, which are reusable. They have a screw back, and I like to put those in certain horns. You know, I think this particular model of Mark VI, this serial number range, came with plastic, and I think it would have been just fine with plastic. However, those metal domed brass resonators, just when you get a ceiling pad and those resonators they're not oversized, but they fill up the pad cup, or the tone hole really nicely, with still plenty of room to work on the pad level, manipulate the pad so it seals, and they just always turn out really well. I think most of that is having a pad that seals well, but the resonator certainly does not hurt it at all. And so moving on from that, once I got it cleaned, now normally I will level tone holes and then clean it. Check and level. I'll check the tone hole, which usually they need a little bit of touch up. Check them and level them. But this one was dirty enough and had enough grime that I wanted to clean it before I did anything. So I cleaned it and did the dent work, which was just a couple. There was a little ding here, which you can kind of see where the lacquer had come off a little bit. And then there was a couple, let's see, I can't remember where now. There was a couple little dings. Oh yeah, on the bow. And the bow's got some really minor things in it still, which are minor enough that they're really not going to probably get them any better. But there was a couple of dings there which also disturbed the lacquer. And I got those out. Oh, and there was actually a decent dent there, which turned out really well. You can barely tell there was anything there. So once it was cleaned, I was able to level the tone holes and take the dents out. And the tone holes on this saxophone really weren't bad at all. It had never been overhauled or anything, so they were all original or untouched. And so they didn't need much. So it was a really nicely built Mark VI, which most of them are. Most of them don't need a lot of work. The neck was very loose, and it would just wiggle around in the socket, and I've got it really snug now. I might actually loosen this down a little bit. I'm still tweaking this horn. Yeah, that's pretty snug, so I'll probably lap that in just slightly to loosen that up. I like to leave them tight because they will tend to break in a little bit, but this one's probably a little too snug. So I got that nice and snug. There are still some little leaks and tweaks that I need to do. I think I got the key venting just about where it needs to be. Every overhaul I do is a little bit different. And it just kind of depends on the player and the setup. Since this one is mine and I set up how I would want it, I still think I like my con better, even though this horn has the sound. This one's a little bit more focused, as you would expect a Mark VI to be compared to an early con. But it has the sound. It's really phenomenal. One of the things I like to do on certain horns is I'll wrap the octave key connecting rod, whatever that's called. What is that called? Let me know what that's called. I'll wrap that in felt so that you don't get that clunk like you do when it's got vinyl. Now the vinyl's a lot more durable, so And that's another thing that I talk about. Like I set them up depending on the player. If it's, especially if it's going to be a student horn, like a beginner, intermediate type player that's just gonna be marching band and playing. Also, this Mark 6 still has the 2-piece side keys, and I'll wrap those in felt, and you can hear those are pretty darn quiet. On this particular horn, I did use natural cork on where the bumper hits the bumper part hits the body. I like using natural cork. It lasts a long time. It may compress slightly over time, but being part where it's not an actual adjustment area, I think that's fine, and it just lasts so long. Felt, the glue can disintegrate a little bit quicker than when it's on natural cork. However, on the adjustment piece, it's on the back bar here, I do use felt. It's a lot quieter than a tech cork, and it doesn't compress like a natural cork. So if you use a natural cork there, it'll be quiet, but over time it will compress. If you use a tech cork, it won't compress, but it'll be noisy. And I mean, I think that's pretty darn quiet. I used a combination on the palm keys with a natural cork on the D and the F, but the E flat I used a tech cork because it just bumps onto the key post here. And if you use a natural cork, it feels really squishy and doesn't feel very positive, and so I like to use a natural cork there. So on the front F key, it was making a little noise, so I just put a little bit of felt on the lever there on the front F key, and that kept that nice and quiet. Just like Selmer would from the factory, I put little pieces of felt on the body, so when like the G sharp key touches, it's fairly quiet. That does seem, it's not bad, but it's a little noisy. And then the lower stack, same thing. And that felt I use is kind of dense, so that does make it a little bit noisier than a softer felt, but it feels really solid. So that's just kind of something. Maybe I'll change that. I just need to play it a little bit longer and see how I feel it is, how it's playing. I checked the bow to the body connection. I didn't take it apart on this one. Sometimes I'll take them apart and re-epoxy them, but this one seemed really solid, and so I just decided not to disturb it because everything was in such nice alignment. I decided to leave it alone. Of course, all the key fitting, that definitely takes time. I check all the key rods and post and to make sure they're straight. Align the post. Take out the key play. That's time consuming, but the keys are very tight. I mean, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but those are not moving at all. Sometimes you'll put the pivot screws in and you'll tighten them all the way down and the key will bind. I'll ream the key out itself, and that way you can tighten that screw all the way down and it stays nice and secure and doesn't want to back out. Also with the post, if you tighten that rod all the way down, there might be a little bit of key play here. So I will countersink that post so you can screw that screw in all the way, keep it nice and snug, and there's no key play. And all these keys are really tight. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a fine line between too tight and not tight enough, obviously. Sometimes I'll set them up and they just feel slightly sluggish, and so it's almost like I do put just the ever slightest amount of key play, which just allows oil to go into the gaps, into the space, and keeps the key working nice and freely without being noisy and without having noticeable key play. And you can hear the horn sounds really good, and that's addicting. I mean, you could sit there and just do this and be pretty satisfied. There are still some leaks in this one. I'm still, like I said, I was still tweaking this thing out, and it's pretty tight, but I know for sure the low B's got a leak, and once I play it a little bit longer, I'll go back into the shop and check the leaks and make sure everything's where it needs to be. I did use just a natural shellac to install these pads. That's another thing when I'm setting a horn up. Sometimes I'll use a really nice hot melt glue that I get from Music Medic that I've had really good luck with. And I really don't mind that on any horn, pro, student, or anything. I think that's really good glue. And so I'll use that on certain, even professional horns that I think the player is going to be maybe not as gentle as he should be, maybe keep it in the car when he shouldn't, and I think that's just going to hold up a little bit better to temperature changes, and so and it works really well. I just kind of want this more of a traditional setup, and the shellac does. I have good luck with the shellac. It's friendly to me when I install pads. So let's play this thing. I want you to hear how it sounds. I'm really excited for you to hear it. I played it quite a bit last night, and I mean, you hear the people say not every Mark 6 is the same, and that's true to an extent. A lot of that is how the horn's set up and adjusted. You might get a Mark 6, oh, this isn't a good Mark 6, but it's got pads in it that are 35 years old and it's leaking badly. Then you get the next Mark 6 that's been nicely overhauled and set up perfectly, and you say, okay, this is a real Mark 6. This is how a Mark 6 should play. I would say 99% of any horn that you think doesn't play like it should needs a proper setup, and it's expensive. I mean, something like an overhaul on this horn with these resonators and everything is probably going to be close to $1,500, and that's a ton of money to invest into your instrument. But if you're playing it every day and you're enjoying it, it's money well spent. And I tell people, if your mechanic called and said your car is going to be $1,500, you'd be thankful that it only costs $1,500, but you're getting a full mechanical rebuild on your baby, and it's something that you'll just love to play, and it's money well spent. And once that's done, even though it will still your regular adjustments, it still will stay in a lot better adjustment than your 35-year-old pads that you've been milking along for however many years or decades. So anyways, let's move on to the playtest. All right, playing the 1963 Mark 6 tenor saxophone. I'm playing it with my Auto-Link Tone Master from the 1940s. That's opened up to about a 105. And man, it goes well with this horn. Let me know what you think. Yeah, so that's it. What a great horn. I'm real happy with it. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. My name's Scott Reed. I'm a woodwind repair technician. I buy, sell, trade, and collect musical instruments. I play music professionally, and now I have a YouTube channel.